When applied properly and under the right circumstances, Flight Control Plus is 100% effective at moving and repelling unwanted Canada geese. In this presentation, we'll review some strategies, the equipment, and best application techniques to get the best results from your application of Flight Control Plus. To understand why flight control is so effective at repelling geese, it's important to first understand how it works. Flight control is a unique and patented repellent technology that works in two ways. First, unlike us, all birds can see in the UV spectrum. Flight control absorbs light in the UV spectrum. Geese can see it on the grass. They can tell the difference between grass treated with flight control and grass that is untreated. The second way that it works is the anti-feeding warning. When geese eat turf treated with flight control, they experience a strong but harmless digestive irritation. It is similar to what we would think of as heartburn or indigestion after a meal. It only takes them one time of eating that grass, but they quickly learn to not feed on the strange-looking grass. Flight control is an extremely effective method of goose control because it gives a threat with a consequence. The visual threat of seeing it on the grass and the digestive consequence from eating it causes a learned behavior modification. Here are a few things to consider before making your application with flight control. When evaluating a property to treat, be sure to consider the tolerance zones. If a property is very large, or if it may not be feasible or economical to spray the whole property, consider areas on the property where geese can be tolerated. You always want to be sure to treat high traffic areas or high priority areas where the goal is to have little to no human interaction with the geese. You always want to try to consider where the geese are coming from to get onto the property, and also where they will go once you repel them. If you're applying in a public area, if possible, try to discourage people from hand feeding the geese. Not only is it bad for the health of the goose, but it may interfere with the results you get from your application. Lastly, become familiar with the seasonality and typical behaviors of geese. The more you know about geese, the more successful you will be with your goose management program. You always want to evaluate the property before making your first application. When evaluating the property, define and measure the drop zone. The drop zone is the active feeding area and is always well defined by goose droppings. The best evidence of goose activity is always what they leave behind. Typically, if part of the property has no droppings, you won't need to treat that area. You want to take away their feeding area and force them to find a new one. You always want to treat the entire drop zone and a little bit of the area just beyond it, about 10 to 15 feet. You can start a program anytime throughout the year, but the number one goal is to prevent them from nesting on the property. Knowing the seasonal behaviors of geese is important for a successful program. You can start an effective program any time of year, but your results will realistically vary depending on when you start. In the early spring, the geese are pairing up, mating, and trying to find a safe place to nest. This is when you want to make the area as unhospitable as possible. Once they've nested, the parents will not abandon the nests, meaning that the geese will be forced to stay in that area for the rest of the summer months. The number one goal should be to try to prevent them from nesting on the site. During the summer months, the goslings are maturing and foraging. They are unable to fly at this point, and again, the parents won't leave their side. From mid to late summer, adult geese go into molt. This is where the adult geese lose their flight feathers. For this 6-week period, none of the geese can fly. They are physically unable to get anywhere unless they are walking. If they have gone into molt on your property, a simple fencing solution may allow you to control where the geese are able to go. Once they've regained their flight feathers in the late summer, the goslings are ready to fly, and they spend the next few months pond hopping and foraging. A flock of geese will generally visit 7 to 10 daily feeding sites. Now we'll review some seasonal treatment strategies. The number one goal is to try to prevent geese from nesting on your site in the spring. If you can prevent them from nesting, you might have little to no bird pressure over the next few months. So we recommend being aggressive with your applications in the early part of the year. Usually 2 to 3 applications will be needed. For the first application of the year, we recommend going at a 1 gallon per acre rate. Any subsequent applications can use a half-gallon per acre rate. This is because we want the geese to experience the full effect of flight control on that first application, which is the first and only time that they will ever eat treated turf. After that, they simply need to see it on the turf to continue repelling them, so we can reduce the rate. It's during this time that they're searching for a nesting site where they feel comfortable and safe. If you're able to take away their food source, you may be able to prevent them from nesting on your site. For the summer months, if you are successful in preventing the geese from nesting, you may be lucky enough to not need to treat the area at all during this time. If not, continue spraying the area at a half-gallon per acre rate. Flight control will not wash off the grass. It only comes off from mowing. When applied correctly, you should be able to get about 3 to 4 mowings out of the product before it is completely removed from the turf. Depending on your geographical area, if the grass slows down in the summer months because of heat stress, you can probably stretch out your summer applications because the product won't be removed as quickly from mowing. If you're just starting a program at this time, you need to understand that because of being in molt, the geese can't and won't leave the property. The best you can do at this time of year is prevent them from feeding on the turf that you treat. In the fall and heading into the winter months, it's important to protect the properties once again as the geese have regained their flight feathers, the goslings have learned to fly, and they're all pond hopping and foraging, trying to find a place to spend for the winter. If you can prevent them from wintering on a property, you will have a much better chance at preventing them from nesting in the spring. The final treatment of the year should be applied after the grass has gone dormant and should be applied at the 1 gallon per acre rate. We do recommend adding a sticker to this final application because it will remain on the turf all winter long until the spring and will prevent any residential and any migratory geese from being comfortable in the area. So what happens next? As the geese eat the turf, the conditioning process begins. Once they feed, it takes about 45 minutes for them to digest the turf. Once digested, they will begin to experience the irritation. They often react by honking loudly, flapping their wings, shaking their heads, and ultimately heading to water to drink. They quickly realize that the bad meal they just got came from the strange-looking grass, and they learn not to feed on it again. Most of the flock will have to sample the treated area. It usually works in less than 1 day, but may take as many as 2 to 3 for the flock to eat the grass, figure out what happened, and decide to leave. Because flight control only comes off the grass for mowing, you will need approximately 6 to 7 applications throughout the year. For the first and the last application, you should use a 1 gallon per acre rate. All of the applications in between can go at a half gallon per acre rate. The amount of water required for flight control to be diluted into will vary depending on your equipment, but usually will be about 7 to 20 gallons per acre. Generally speaking, the less water you use, the better results you'll get. You should always have your equipment properly calibrated to ensure a good application. If you're not sure if your equipment is calibrated, you can find many tutorial videos online. If it's not, it could be costing you time, money, and giving you bad results. Because flight control is a thick product, you should be sure to thoroughly shake the jug before mixing it with water. Any product that has been sitting for a while may begin to settle. Here are some tips to get the best results from your application. Your first application of the year is the most important one to set you up for success. And because of that, you want to do this one as well and as carefully as possible. You should think of your application of flight control as if you were essentially trying to spray paint the turf. You want the application to cover the grass as evenly as possible. This means you should try as best as you can to clean the area of any debris that may prevent this from happening. If possible, try to clean up or use a leaf blower to get rid of any heavy grass clippings, goose droppings, leaves, sticks, or other debris. Try to apply immediately after the grass has been mowed to extend the longevity of the application. You never want to apply flight control on wet grass, any grass that has rain, dew, snow, or sleet on it. Flight control will just run right off the blade before it has had a chance to dry. If it runs off the blade, the geese won't get a chance to eat it and it won't work. So as a general rule, if your boots get wet or your shoes when you're walking through the grass, you shouldn't apply. Under normal conditions with normal humidity, flake control will only take about 30 minutes to dry, but you should try to avoid applying 3 hours or less to any rainfall or irrigation to be safe. You only want to use a fan tip nozzle to apply. The goal is to create the smallest possible droplet or a fine mist that will cover the grass evenly and entirely. As with any chemical, avoid applying in any windy conditions to avoid drift. You want to try to do your best to prevent flake control from getting on any unwanted surfaces. Lastly, try to avoid walking through, dragging hoses over, or any activity in the area until it has had a chance to dry. To prevent knocking the product off of the grass before it's dried, try to limit or avoid activity in that area altogether. Again, once it dries on the grass, all normal activity can resume. It will not come off the grass once it's dried. People and other wildlife will have no idea you did anything to the area. Only apply flake control with a fine tip nozzle using equipment like a JD9 gun, a backpack sprayer, a weed wand, a liquid TTA unit, or a ride-on sprayer. Never apply flake control with a controlled droplet applicator or a Chemlong gun. There is already a sticker in Flake Control Plus, so you don't need to add one to any regular applications. However, we do recommend adding a sticker to your last application of the year. And this is because this application will be on the turf for up to 5 months, and we've seen better results with people adding a sticker to this final application. And again, try to avoid any activity in the area until the product has had the chance to dry. We want you to be successful using flake control in your goose management program, and we'd be glad to help you in any way that we can. If you do have any additional questions, please give us a call, send us an email, or visit our website. And be sure to check us out on your favorite social media sites for tips, product updates, and other news throughout the year. Thanks for your time. Have a great rest of your day.